Good evening and welcome to PJTN Online. I'm your host, Laurie Cardoza-Moore, and I want to thank you for tuning in again with us this evening. This is the program where we talk about Israel, we talk about our Jewish brethren, we talk about our biblical responsibility to stand with our Jewish brethren, and of course we talk about the rise of anti-Semitism. For those of you who are new to the program, we want to welcome you here. This is an opportunity for you to learn. We open up the floor for questions, comments, anything you want to talk about with regards to these issues. So I want to thank you again for joining us again this week. There's been a lot of activity going on around the globe with the issue of anti-Semitism, the question about anti-Semitism and the problems that we see happening globally, unfortunately, and even here in the United States. You have an opportunity tonight through this program to send us comments or questions. And for those of you who've been tuning in the past and have sent us your emails and your comments, I want to thank you so much. We appreciate having this conversation and this dialogue with you. We want to equip you so that you can educate and equip your family and friends with this information. It's critically important. We live at a time when last year, in just 1 year, the Anti-Defamation League saw an 86% increase in anti-Semitism, and that's globally. But the most disconcerting part of that study that they conducted was that almost 70% of anti-Semitism grew, almost 70% here in the United States of America. The Judeo-Christian nation, the nation that we have to thank our Jewish brethren for helping found, Haim Solomon, who was involved in bankrolling the American Revolution with George Washington, and of course those Judeo-Christian principles that are the foundation of our form of government even. So we owe a huge debt to our Jewish brethren. In Romans 15, the Apostle Paul told us that if you have benefited from the Jews spiritually, that you owe it to them materially. And so our mission, our goal with proclaiming justice to the nations is to educate Christians about their biblical responsibility to stand with our Jewish brethren and defend the state of Israel against the rise of anti-Semitism. One of my greatest concerns is the fact that the church is not involved in fighting this battle to any degree, that our pastors are not equipped, they're not trained, they're not taught about the connection to the Hebrew roots of our Christian faith. And it's because of that blindness, that lack of information, the ignorance, if you will, from both the pastors and the congregation, because the congregants are not being taught. It's what helps to fuel this hatred. And I want you to know that this is an organization that you can come to learn more. And so if this is the first time again joining our program, I want to invite you to go to our website at pjtn.org and sign up to become a watchman, get our newsletters, our action alerts, our media alerts, and stay in tune, stay informed to what's going on. Because you cannot rely on the mainstream media. As we all know, President Trump calls it fake news, and there's a reason why, as we all know as well. So our mission, as I said, is to educate Christians about our biblical responsibility. We accomplish that mission by producing award-winning programs and documentaries that we broadcast through our 21 different media partners globally. We are now, just this year, reaching 2.6 billion viewers around the globe with our message. We have a program focused on Israel that airs every week on Daystar Television, Sunday evenings. You can tune in to Daystar, check your local listings. And the program airs at 11 p.m. Central Time, 9 p.m. Pacific Time. And of course, if you miss it Sunday night, you can always tune in on Monday night to watch it on God TV. All the other programs, just check your local listings to see if they're covering our program, Focus on Israel, and we encourage you to tune in. There's a wealth of information in those programs, and it's there for you. Of course, if you can't get our programming, You can always go to our website, go to the store page, and order our documentaries, order our television programs. And, you know, I encourage everybody to use these media tools to educate and inform their children, their grandchildren. This is an opportunity for you to have a conversation, to have a movie night. I'm real big on media because that's what speaks to this generation. Videos, television, that's how we receive our information en masse. You know, years ago, during the Nazis' rise to power, Hitler understood the power of media. And of course, he put a radio in everyone's home so he can indoctrinate the Germans with his propaganda and his hatred. So it's critically important that we leverage media in order to get to the masses and educate you with accurate information. I also just want to mention to you that if you're not a PJTN watchman, I encourage you to go to our website. Again, sign up. It's $20 a month. Your contribution helps us to put programs like this one and all of our global programs on the air. We can't do it without the financial support of our viewing audience. So I want to encourage you to partner with us. Join us in this effort to take this message, this mission around the globe to Christians who are not going to hear this message from the pastors. You know, years ago, the Lord said to me that I want you to bypass my pulpits. I repeatedly went to pastors. I was meeting with pastors, sharing with them the vision that God had given to me, the mission he had given me, that he'd called me to. And the responses I would get from them was, well, that's not what God has called me to. And it was very frustrating. And during that season of time when I kept having doors close, one after another, the Lord said to me, I want you to bypass my pulpits because I've gone to my shepherds and they refused to listen. And so it was from that time that I said to my husband, who's a 2-time Emmy Award-winning director, Stan Moore, I said, we need to start producing programming to educate Christians because this biblical narrative is not being communicated in churches. I was in a church back then, and we rarely heard about Israel. So it's critically important that we understand that when we study our Bibles, when we read our Bibles, we're reading from a Hebraic understanding, not from Greco-Romanism. And I had this conversation with a couple of Christian women while I was in Florida this past week. It's been a busy travel week again for us at PJTN. But we were talking about that, and they said Greco-Roman. And I said, yes, think about it. The Bible was written by Hebrews, by Jews. They understood the Hebrew language. They understood the Hebrew interpretations. But we took the Bible, the Christians, the Gentile world took the Bible and translated into Greek, and we use Greek to interpret what the Bible means. And therein lies the biggest problem. We're not supposed to interpret it from a Greco-Roman perspective. It was only translated into Greek so that the Greeks could read it, so the Greeks could understand it. But if we go back to the New Testament, even to Yeshua's teachings, to his disciples' teachings, the apostles, they were all teaching from a Hebraic understanding because they were all Jews. And unless we understand that, then we get confused and we accept the notion of replacement theology and supersessionism and revisionism within Christianity. And therein lies the greatest problem. And so when I started to study the Bible, when God started opening up my eyes and I started asking the questions, what the words meant. Of course, I was studying from a New King James Version, which is one of my favorite versions to study from, but I can't get all of the full meaning unless I study from the Hebrew. So it's very important as you're reading your scriptures, even your Old Testament and your New Testament, you need to have a Strong's Concordance next to you so that when you look up, when you're reading passages in the scripture, you need to go back and you need to look at those words and what they mean in context within the Hebraic understanding. So I want to encourage you in your Bible studies because honestly, unless we study, unless we know our Bible, and that is first and foremost for everything we do at PJTN. I can bring you information every Wednesday night and share with you events that have unfolded over the past week and talk about these issues, talk about our biblical responsibility. But unless you have that biblical foundation, and that's why I want to encourage you, you should spend time studying the Bible. Spend time in the Torah, the first 5 books of Moses, because therein lies the whole story. God laid it all out for the nation of Israel. And as we know, the Apostle Paul said that in Ephesians, that if you are in Christ, you are Abraham's seed and you are heirs according to the promise. And Paul also told the believers in Galatia that you who were once outside of the commonwealth of Israel have been brought near. So, or I may have reversed those scriptures, but the point is that we are now part of that commonwealth. We are part of the nation of Israel because we accepted Yeshua as the Messiah, as the Jewish Messiah. And that grafted us into that covenant and that promise. And it's very exciting to read the promise that God spoke to Moses, and he laid it all out, and then to read through the prophets, to read through the writings, the Psalms, the Proverbs, and then into the New Testament and see how God has been faithful from the very beginning to keep his word. You will hear me say over and over and over that the Bible is a book written to Israel, for Israel, about Israel. And if you read the Bible, the first 11 chapters are all about God's creation. But when you get to chapter 12 of Genesis and you read through to the end, it's all about Israel. So it's very exciting times to be alive. And, you know, as we talk about these issues, and I encourage you to stay informed, to stay educated, but I also encourage you to be a watchman in your community. We see, as I said earlier, we see an almost 70% increase in anti-Semitism in the United States, 86% around the world. Whether you're in Poland, in Ireland, in New Zealand, or Australia, or even right here in the United States, as Christians, we will be held accountable for what we did or didn't do with our Jewish brethren. If we go back and remember the story of Cain and Abel, and when Cain killed Abel's blood, it's stated in the scriptures. God said to Cain, "Where's your brother?" And Cain's response, "Am I my brother's keeper?" But then God asked Cain, or said to Cain, "Your brother's blood cries out from the ground to me." And that should be an eye-opener for all of us. We should all understand that we do have a responsibility. We can look to the book of Joshua, and even before that, before Moses, when Moses was preparing in Deuteronomy, preparing the Israelites in Joshua to take them across the Jordan to take the promised land that God had promised them. And the 3 tribes of the 12 tribes of Israel, Gad, Reuben, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, did not want to cross the Jordan. They wanted to stay on the lush green acreage that was on the east side of the Jordan. And Moses chastised them and said, "Will you be like your brethren who discouraged your brethren when the 10 spies came back and were fearful of the giants that were in the land?" Remember, it was just Caleb and Joshua who said, "We can take the land. We can take these giants. Nothing's too difficult." They had the faith, but we also know the rest of the story is that generation had to die out in the wilderness. They could not enter the promised land. They didn't have the faith that Joshua and Caleb had. But Joshua and Caleb led them across. But Moses chastised Gad, Reuben, and the half-tribe of Manasseh because they didn't want to cross over. And they had to cross over. And it was required that they go over. And Moses told them, "You can leave your wives, your children, your livestock on the east side of the Jordan. But your men who are fighting age, have to cross this Jordan, and you have to help your brethren take their territory." We cannot sit here as Americans or European Christians, and specifically Americans who sit on the western side of the Atlantic. We can't sit here and allow our Jewish brethren to have to fight this battle alone. we have a responsibility to stand with them, to fight with them, to lift them up, to support them. And because Israel's called to be a light to the nations, and there will be no peace without the Messiah. And of course, we know there's not going to be any peace until he returns. And so the whole concept of dividing the land and thinking that dividing the land is going to bring us peace, it will never bring peace. It won't happen. In fact, we know the prophet Joel said that in the latter days, God was going to wipe out the nations of the world because they were dividing up his land. And the anti-Semitism that we see on the rise today is being fueled over the issue of the land rights. We are warned in the text of Scripture that you are not to remove your brother's ancient boundary stones. And when our previous administrations who had supported that, and we need to pray for President Trump that he doesn't buy into that narrative. But we can't, if we go the way of previous administrations and force a two-state solution, it will only be a stumbling stone to this country. God will judge this nation. And so at proclaiming justice to the nations, we do not believe in dividing the land of Israel. God, when he created the universe, he was the one who established the 70 nations. He established their territories, and he chose Israel for himself and Jerusalem to place his name. So if we are truly Bible-believing Christians and we're going to uphold God's word, then by golly, we need to study the word so that we can show ourselves approved, and that way we don't fall to the false narrative. I was just reading an email from a group called FOSNA. It's the Sabeel Foundation. It's a Christian, supposedly Christian organization, and they're based in North America, and they're trying to educate Christians to stand with the Arabs, the Palestinian people, and falsely accuse their Jewish brethren of occupying Palestinian land. There is no Palestinian land. There was a Palestine that was established by the Roman government, but there was no Palestinian people. They are all Arabs, all from nomadic tribes, all from different areas in the region. And unfortunately, because we don't teach history, or we teach a form of revisionist history, most of us are completely clueless about this. This is why it's so important that we study the Bible. It's a great book. It's not just an incredible love story between God and a people whom he chose, the apple of his eye, Israel. It is also a great history book. And, you know, even the Smithsonian Institute, which boggles my mind in Washington, D.C., recognizes that the Bible is the best book in history, in antiquity, because the people and the events actually happened. They actually lived. And so you have a secular organization who's even saying that. But unfortunately, when it comes to, the part about God giving the land to Israel, we don't want to read that part. In fact, there's a pastor in East Jerusalem, in Bethlehem, who has stated that they don't study the Old Testament because it's too Zionist. Well, I guess he's going to have to give an answer to God when he stands before him one day, because this was God's decision, not man's. And, if he professes to be a man of the cloth or a pastor, I have serious, in fact, I call him a false prophet, because he is teaching falsely, false doctrine, false tradition, and he's leading the sheep, his flock, astray. So there are many pastors that are doing that, even here in the United States. So moving on tonight, let's talk about some of the issues that are coming up. And again, I want to just remind you, you have the opportunity to ask questions, make comments. I will, through the program, refresh, and I'll make sure that we check. I'm going to check these comments and questions as they come up. So please feel free to ask questions. Let me just check real quick. Okay. I see one comment from Nancy. Are you all conservative We support Israel. Well, Nancy, you're at the right place. We welcome you here. Thank you for tuning in tonight. So please, again, send us your questions and let's have a conversation tonight, because that's why I'm here, to have this conversation with you. I want to talk about some of the incidents that have come up. There was a recent incident on Millsaps College campus. And one of the things that I have been saying for some time now, since we've seen a rise of Christian persecution, especially in the Middle East, that there is, that when you see the rise of anti-Semitism, you're also going to see the persecution of Christians as well. And we've seen Christians who've been persecuted throughout the Middle East. It's been devastating. Christian communities have been devastated by the attacks, the brutal attacks and murder, senseless murder of men, women, and children. It's just been absolutely outrageous. But we have this phenomenon going on that you see an increase of anti-Semitism and also an increase in anti-Christian bigotry. In fact, this past week, many of you may have tuned into the news with Joy Behar making fun of Vice President Pence because he prays and he talks to the Lord and the Lord speaks to him. That was such an insulting comment for her to make. But it is indicative of the greater problem, not just here in the United States, but even in Europe, where Christians are mocked. They're made a mockery of. They're laughed at and ridiculed because of their faith. It is outrageous that we see this going on in the United States of America. You know, we are a Judeo-Christian nation. How in the world did we get to this place? But at Millsaps College, there was a Christian center that was actually vandalized this past week. And there were some horrible statements that were plastered. I can't repeat the expletives that were stated, but if you're not familiar with Millsaps, it's located in Jackson, Mississippi. Again, this is the heart of the South. You know, what is going on? This is typically where you find your Bible Belt. You have evangelical Christians, people of faith, of strong faith. But here at a university in Mississippi, there was graffiti. There's a quote here. They just swept it. The university was contacted about some of the comments that were made, spray painted on the walls, and the horrible graffiti that was made in some of the inside the college. And when they were contacted and asked about what they were going to do about it, there was a student at Millsaps who refuses to be recognized, but said that the administration just swept the issue under the rug. They didn't want to discuss it. The student did ask to remain anonymous because he was afraid of retribution. That's unbelievable. Retribution on a U.S. public campus? Well, if we watch what's going on campuses across the United States of America, that student is obviously correct in being concerned about his well-being. But some of what's so horrific about this incident is this wasn't just students who were involved in this. There were even professors who were engaged in the content. There was a horrible statement, an expletive made about the governor of Mississippi, Governor Bryant. Both professors and students alike participated in the vandalism of the property. One of the professors, James Boley, who is the chairman, get this, of religious studies at the Religious Studies Department at Millsaps. He was also involved in this. This is outrageous. And this is the head, the chairman of the Religious Studies Department of a university. I would have fired him. And you would think that the administration would have fired him. Leaders, professors are supposed to be role models for their students. So this is outrageous that this is going on. According to Millsaps' website, the school is dedicated to academic excellence, open inquiry, and free expression, the exploration of faith to inform vocation, and the innovative shaping of the social, economic, and cultural progress of our region. Wow. Millsaps' Director of Communications and Marketing, John Sewell, was contacted. And he was quoted saying this is the first time that he had heard about it. So apparently communication is not a strong suit at Millsaps College. For all you parents who are maybe thinking or considering sending your students to that state school or from any other place in the country, I would have serious pause to do that. So it's very disappointing. Apparently there was the defamation of character or destruction of the property is unacceptable. This is what the administration said. They found this incident to be offensive, hurtful, and contrary to our values, encouraging civil and respectful discourse between disparate points of view, and subsequently took swift action to address it. The individuals involved underwent a disciplinary process, and the rooms were repainted as soon as possible. That's the administration's comment. However, one of the students said the administration just repainted the building and nothing else has ever come of it. So no, the professors weren't fired. They weren't put on administrative leave. They just continued to collect their check and, got a little pat on the hand for being such a great role model at Millsaps College. Ladies and gentlemen, it's pathetic what's happening on our universities, and that these people get away with it unless we as parents, if any of you tonight are on Facebook, on our PJTN online program, and you're from Mississippi, you should be writing a letter to the dean or the provost of Millsaps College condemning this outrageous action that's going on. These professors need to be fired. They are not role models for these students. We're trying to prepare our young people to come into society, come into the culture, and give back to this wonderful country. And unfortunately, not at Millsaps, not so much. The student had told Big League Politics, who ran the story, that the students still attend the school and the 4 photographed professors still teach there. The building was already under construction when they broke in and vandalized the rooms, the students said. So it's again, ladies and gentlemen, it's outrageous. This is just one college. We know that this is going on all over the place. I also want to mention to you, there's an interesting article. We talk about anti-Semitism, but and revisionist history as it pertains to the Holocaust. Many of you have been following the news about what happened in Poland. We talked a little bit about that last week, how the Polish government has passed a law that makes it illegal to even suggest that the Polish government or Poland was involved in the Holocaust. Apparently, Poland is upset, and I agree, rightly so, that their concentration camps are referred to as Polish concentration camps when they were actually Nazi concentration camps. But for the Polish government to make it illegal to make a statement, what I'm talking about on this show, it makes me liable. If I were ever to go into Poland and they had this documented on me, they could arrest me as soon as I land in a Polish airport because I'm violating this law. Because unfortunately, the revisionist history, rewriting the history of Poland's involvement, I have to be very clear, there were many Poles who helped rescue Jews. They were righteous. In fact, there are more Poles who are buried in the Garden of the Righteous at Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Remembrance Memorial in Jerusalem. There are more Polish citizens that are buried there, considered righteous because they helped to save the Jews. There were 30 to 35,000 Jews who survived the Holocaust in Poland. But for Poland to make it illegal now, to reference or even suggest that there were Poles who were involved. And earlier this week, the president of Poland, when he was speaking at a security conference in Munich, Germany, made an outrageous statement that the Jews were involved in the Holocaust as well. They were involved in killing their own as well. Well, one of the things that the Prime Minister of Poland should have also recognized is there were many Christians who were involved with killing the Jews in Poland, who collaborated with the Nazis. And for me to make that statement, again, ladies and gentlemen, would make it a crime. It's illegal. And it's violating that law. And I could serve a minimum of 3 years in prison in Poland. And, you know, when this news initially broke, I went on Twitter, and I want to, again, encourage you all, if you're not following us on the other social media sites, on Twitter, Instagram, I encourage you to go on, sign up, and like us, follow us, because I started a Twitter war on the issue with Poland. You would not believe some of the anti-Semitic comments that were made to me, and how lacking, how ignorant the Poles are about what actually happened. I was having a conversation with one gentleman, and I asked him, do you even know what the worst pogrom was in Poland during that time? The Jedwabne pogrom. He couldn't even answer the question. But of course, I was accused of not knowing, you know, being an American and not knowing what was going on. But that pogrom was one of the most egregious pogroms by Poles. That was 1,600 Polish citizens in one little city who rounded up 1,600 Jews who lived in that same community. These were people that were neighbors. They shopped in each other's shops. They lived next door to one another. And these 1,600 Poles pushed these Jews into a barn and set that barn on fire and burned it to the ground with all of those people, men, women, and children. All of those Jews were burned down with them, and they didn't even know. That's the implication of revisionist history. When a country decides they don't like what history said about them 70 years ago, and they're going to rewrite, they're going to whitewash what actually took place. And we remember when the Allied forces liberated the concentration camps, many of us remember General Patton, who made the statement to the people that were there, document what you see, take pictures, because someday someone is going to say this didn't happen. And that was Auschwitz. That was in Poland. And so, unfortunately, General Patton was way ahead of his time. He was a visionary, a prophet, really, if you will, because here we are living in the day when we have governments who are rewriting history, revisionist history. And it's not just Poland. It's Lithuania, Ukraine, Latvia. They're doing it. Who's to say that Germany won't do it, or other countries? God forbid that happen. But ladies and gentlemen, the trend has begun. We see it, you know, we've on this show, we've talked about the textbooks, the curriculum being taught to our children, and how our children are being indoctrinated with propaganda. It is a dangerous, slippery slope. History is being rewritten in our colleges and our universities. We have millennials who will vote for an avowed socialist when those millennials live in a constitutional republic. How does that happen? It's because of the teachers. It's because of the curriculum that we're using to teach our children. Very dangerous. Dangerous indeed. But I encourage you, again, go to Twitter. But this article on Breitbart News was quite disturbing. The title is Holocaust Denial, Anti-Semitic Threats Soaring on Social Media. And so I read the article. I was going through it, and I decided, because we know that social media is a hotbed for anti-Semitism. Images that are posted there, statements that are made about the Jews, it's deplorable. It's disgusting to see what people will stoop to and what they'll say. But I decided to read on. I wanted to see what the comments were. And ladies and gentlemen, the comments to this article were disgusting, equally disgusting of the information that I read in this article. There were people making comments that it's the Jews who control the media. It's the Jews who control the banks. It's the Jews' fault. This isn't Breitbart News. This is a conservative publication that I go to get information. They've covered several of our stories, articles that have been written about PJTN and our work and myself. And these people, the comments that they made was absolutely disgusting. This is what's happening in the United States of America because we bought in to the lie, and why it is so critically important that we as Christians rise up and speak against this. We should be commenting on these articles. We should be leaving comments condemning these people. When I was arguing with the different Poles from Poland when I was on my Twitter, and I asked some of these people, you know, you're Christians, or the majority of you are Christians, you're supposed to be. Where's your Catholic faith? Because even with the Catholic Church in 1965 through Nostra Aetate, the Catholic Church condemned anti-Semitism. They said you cannot be a good Catholic and be an anti-Semite. You cannot say that God is still not in covenant with the Jews. And yes, the land is part of the covenant. Sorry to say, when God said to Abraham, I'm going to make you like the stars of the heavens and the sands on the seashore, and all the land you see, Abraham, I'm giving it to you and your descendants forever. There's that word, forever. You cannot divide the covenant. You can't separate the covenant from God's calling, his plan for Israel. You cannot separate the land from Israel. And so unfortunately, again, you know, we have Christians in Poland, Catholics, who don't read their Bible and who don't know the facts. So I hope that if we have anybody watching us from Poland tonight, that you will join with PJTN and that you will help us take this message to your community. I'm working with a young man, Irish for Israel. And for those of you who are tuned in from Ireland, I want to encourage you to seek this group out. They are fighting. They're trying to do everything they can within their government, lobbying their government to push back at the anti-Semitism that is so pervasive, even in Ireland. And that there's a piece of legislation that they were trying to pass in Ireland that was introduced supporting the BDS movement. And President Trump stepped in and said, well, you know, if you sign this into law, then we're just not going to be able to do business with you because you're going to make our businesses illegal. Our businesses can't operate. We have a law on the books in the United States. We can't do business with people who boycott Israel. And of course, now the Irish government is rethinking its position. I think President Trump needs to do the same thing with Poland and tell Poland, you know what? We're severing ties with you. We have nothing to do with you, because if this is what you're going to do, if you're not going to be true to history and you're going to whitewash history and what happened, and yes, there were Poles who were complicit in the Holocaust. So Trump should say, sorry, we're going to pull out of Poland and we're not going to do business with Poland anymore. Maybe if we hit them in the pocketbook, maybe the Prime Minister of Poland will rethink his position. Another story I want to share with you is about, I want to move to talking about the indoctrination of our children in our public schools. You know, we've been fighting this battle here at PJTN since 2012 when we found a textbook, an anti-Semitic textbook that had a quote that legitimized Palestinians blowing themselves up in a Jerusalem restaurant because they were waging a war against Israeli government policies. And after reviewing that one textbook with that quote, we not only found that the textbook was not just anti-Semitic, there weren't just anti-Semitic quotes in it and anti-Israel quotes accusing Israel of being occupiers, but there was also content in the textbooks that were both anti-American, anti-Judeo-Christian, pro-Islamic content. And so, unfortunately, this content is being fed to our children, and we see a culture that is changing post 9/11. But in San Diego Unified School District, there's a judge, there was a lawsuit. And I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, the way that we're going to push back at this movement, this revisionist history movement, the indoctrinating of our children that's going on in the United States of America. And again, this is happening everywhere. It's not just happening in San Diego or in Florida or in Tennessee or in New York or in Ohio. This is happening everywhere. When that story broke here in Tennessee, we started hearing from parents when it broke on Fox News. People who are paying attention and engaged. When the story broke, we started hearing from parents all over the country. But I want to just share with you, this judge, a lawsuit was filed by a parent because the parents felt that their child was being indoctrinated with propaganda, pro-Islamic propaganda that was in violation of the Establishment Clause of the Constitution. And I will tell you, ladies and gentlemen, when you look in your children's history and geography and social studies textbooks, and you look at just look at the comparative religious section of the textbook, and we shouldn't even be teaching comparative religion to our children in high school or in middle school or elementary school. That should be reserved for college, for university. But this parent decided to file this lawsuit, and the district judge, the federal judge who presides over the area where the lawsuit was filed in San Diego, decided there were some words that the judge did not like that were included in the lawsuit, and so she decided to strike these words. But let me share this with you, this article, and it says, in a dangerous and bizarre precedent, a federal judge disallowed references to the Council on American Islamic Relations, CARE, and their ties to Hamas in a lawsuit brought by a civilian, a parent. This CARE, for those of you who are not familiar with the Council on American Islamic Relations, CARE was listed as an unindicted co-conspirator in the largest terrorist fundraising operation in the history of the United States of America back in Richardson, Texas in 1987. And unfortunately, this reference, the judge did not like this reference of CARE to Hamas as a terrorist group. Now, Hamas, for those of you who are not familiar with Hamas, Hamas is a member of the Muslim Brotherhood group, another terrorist organization. Our college campuses host clubs, the Students for Justice in Palestine Club and Muslim Student Association Club. And guess what? Those groups have ties to the Muslim Brotherhood as well. They're also terrorist fronts that are given legitimate status, club status on our college campuses. How does this happen? In the United States of America, where is the outrage? Why aren't parents who are sending their kids to those schools demanding that these groups be shut down? But this district judge, Cynthia Bashant, did allow references to CARE's hostility towards Israel and allegations that CARE promotes discriminatory bias against non-Muslim students on the basis of their religion. So she allowed that. The article goes on to say the case involves a suit brought by the Freedom of Conscience Defense Fund against the school district for instituting an anti-Islamophobia, anti-bullying program designed by CARE. Now, this is not the first time that CARE has been involved in designing or publishing content for our children in our schools. A couple years ago, there was an editor by the name of Shabir Mansouri. He's the head of the Council on Islamic Education, and Shabir Mansouri was editing textbooks, Pearson textbooks, in 37 states under Common Core, and he was quoted saying that he's launching a bloodless revolution in American schools. So we also found a piece of instructional materials here in Tennessee that was being used for our 7th grade students that appeared to be published by CARE again. And of course, it taught the 5 pillars of Islam. It taught about the religion of Islam. It taught about the prayers, the Shahada. We had a parent who had a Shahada, a 3rd grader who had Shahada as one of her spelling words in her spelling list. But getting back to this article, CARE has been involved for many years in editing our children's textbooks. This is a group tied to Hamas, a Muslim Brotherhood terrorist group. And this goes on in school districts across this country. Every school district has these textbooks, this curriculum, especially the states that have Common Core. But the suit charges that the program is unconstitutional because it violates the First Amendment's Establishment Clause, which prohibits government actions that unduly favor one religion over another. And ladies and gentlemen, again, if you go through your children's textbooks, and especially the comparative religions section, and you compare the number of pages, the content, and the number of pages dedicated to Islam versus Christianity and Judaism. The one book that we reviewed here in Tennessee had 37 pages. And Christianity only had 13, Judaism had 17. Christianity is still the largest religion. If we're going to have comparative religion sections in our textbooks, then obviously it should be Christianity that has 37 pages, and 13 pages should be dedicated to Islam. Because Christianity, despite what some believe, like our former president, actually is the largest religion on the planet still. But I go on to mention this program, in this article, the program is solely about, since the program is solely about Muslim students, the FCDF charges that it establishes them as a privileged group within the school community. Moreover, the suit contends that CARE, the designers of the program, is an organization that is intrinsically religious in nature, and it is. Their whole goal is to teach our children about their faith. But don't teach the Beatitudes, and you better not teach the Ten Commandments in school, because then it will cause an outcry and a lawsuit against the school. So this is another example of what is happening in our schools. So if you're listening tonight and you live in California and even in the San Diego area, but it's not just San Diego, because again, this type of curriculum is being used in school districts across the state of California. So I encourage you to go to your child's school, your grandchild's school, ask to review the curriculum. Ask that the principal or the front office, or go to the library in the school and ask them to see the history, geography, and social studies books that are being used to teach your children. Because you wonder why our kids don't know the Constitution or the Bill of Rights, or they can't read the Declaration of Independence. Well, it's because they're busy learning about a foreign information, a religion that is being published and promoted to our children through CARE, a terrorist group, a group that has ties to the Muslim Brotherhood. That should make us all very nervous. But it's why we're fighting this battle. And I'm glad you're here tonight so that you can hear and you can learn and be educated and informed so that you can address this issue in your own community. I want to move on to talk about some of the recent incidents on a lighter note. We talked about Poland internationally, but India, there's some surprising things happening in India. The relationship with India and the State of Israel has been growing over the years. And I found this article that I want to share with you, which is very exciting. And the headline of the article, it's posted on the Jerusalem Post, but it says 70,000 Hindus rally for Israel under the Hindu Shamati banner. And the article goes on to say there were massive calls for India to stand by Israel and move its embassy to Jerusalem. Again, you know, when President Trump decides to take leadership, when America leads, then other nations follow. So I commend President Trump for his willingness to move our U.S. embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, the capital of Israel. But here, even the Hindus are calling to move their embassy as well to Jerusalem. The rally was one of several organized by the Hindu Shamati, longtime supporters of close India-Israel relations. For many in India, Israel has become synonymous with survival, creativity, and prosperity. They understand the common challenges both nations face, with envious enemies trying to undermine both the tiny Jewish state and India. To show solidarity with the Jewish people and the State of Israel, the Hindu Shamati organized tens of thousands of people to express solidarity with Israel as part of its Foundation Day. Sri Tapan Ghosh, who is the head of the Hindu Shamati, urged the crowd to bless the India-Israel alliance. It's amazing. He pointed out that Jews for the last 2,000 years, similar to Hindus, have been fighting a battle for existence. The struggle for survival unites Hindus and Jews apart from the 2,500 years of glorious history that unites both the communities. And February 14th rally was not the first. Actually, in 2014, then Hamas terrorism against Israel was on the rise when rockets were raining down on Israel. They had the Hindu Shamati staged the biggest pro-Israel rally outside of Israel, and they had 20,000 people show up in solidarity. It's fascinating to see these countries like India, who are wanting to bless Israel. So it's very exciting, and I'm sure some of you have been following that they found one of the lost tribes, B'nai Menashe, in a remote village in India. So I think there's maybe some tie to the lost tribes maybe being up there. But the fact that these people know that they're supposed to bless Israel is just phenomenal. It's very exciting to see. So that's encouraging. I want to just check and see if we've got any comments or questions that have come in. All right. Oh, Donald Coates on with us tonight, and he's saying that anti-Semitism is rising in the teaching world. You make a great statement, Donald, and that's exactly right. If we remember, and I was talking to a seasoned teacher, she's been teaching over 25 years in the public school system in Florida, and then I met another teacher in Newton, Massachusetts when we were up there organizing a rally. And these are all older teachers, and they said that you can noticeably see the difference in the content. They're not teaching the Holocaust like they used to in schools in history anymore. I mean, it's devastating. But they mentioned to me that what's happening in the teaching universities, that a lot of these new teachers who are coming out over the last 5-6 years who are graduating have already been indoctrinated with this. So this is not unfamiliar territory. This curriculum is not unfamiliar to them. And these teachers are even talking, these seasoned teachers are talking about how these young teachers are coming in and they think they're teaching accurate history, they're giving their students accurate information. But unfortunately, Donald, you're right. They're also buying into this anti-Semitism. And unfortunately, it is being fueled by what we teach our kids. Some of those teachers, I'm sure the majority of the teachers, don't realize that they are playing part of a role in dehumanizing, again, the Jewish people, minimizing. It's why we have a growing movement of people saying that the Holocaust didn't really happen, and that it's overrated, and there weren't as many people who died. Of course, Mahmoud Abbas wrote his paper on that in Moscow. So it's very disturbing to see that. But let me just check real quick and see if we've... Okay. Any more comments? Thank you all for sharing your thoughts and feedback. Okay. Moving on, we've got about 6 minutes left. And again, I want to give you an opportunity. If you have a question or you want to make a comment, now's the time to do it. I do want to talk to you about recent events. We do have two members of Congress who are in Israel as we speak. In fact, they're probably waking up now, getting ready to start their tour for the day. But PJTN works with an organization in Israel, and our mission is to educate Christians about their biblical responsibility to stand with Israel and the Jewish people against the rise of anti-Semitism. And whether those Christians are in positions of power in the government whether they are teachers, whether they're citizens. Our goal is to find the Christians and educate them. And so they are on a tour of Israel right now, and they're learning more about the land, more about Judea and Samaria. One of the things that is unique to our group is we focus on the Bible. And yes, there are some, they'll meet with some of the political leaders, with the prime minister, and some of the members of the Knesset, as well as leading leaders in industry as well. But we take them to biblically significant locations, places to help them reconnect to their Judeo-Christian faith, and share the truth about what is going on in the land. We take them to Judea and Samaria, what the world calls the West Bank, of course, and we introduce them to a whole world that the world never focuses, the media doesn't focus on. So it's absolutely a fabulous trip, and we're getting word back that the trip is going absolutely well, and we've got some great feedback from the congressman, so we're excited about that. Another thing I want to talk about is I had a meeting this past week in Florida with some of the K through 12 leaders. There were, I believe, 13 leaders who came from across the state to talk about launching a textbook campaign in the state of Florida, similar to what we did here in Tennessee. For those of you who are aware, back in 2013, we mobilized to remove that anti-Semitic textbook from the schools. And although we weren't able to remove it from the county schools, we were able to change the laws with regards to how textbooks are evaluated, how they're adopted in Tennessee. And so we're taking that, we're training parents, teaching parents how to review textbooks. We're working with another organization in doing that, and then how to get engaged in the local community. The way President Trump said he went to Washington, D.C. to drain the swamp. And we have to drain the swamp in our community on a local level. We can't expect the Prime Minister or the President of the United States to do it. So we are engaging, we're informing parents and citizens and teaching them how to get involved in local politics, attend their school board meetings, learn more about what's going on in their district schools. It's critically important because our children are, again, they are vulnerable, and of course we need to step in and protect them. But I'm excited. We have 20 counties, at least 20 counties across the state of Florida. Florida has 67 counties. And our goal is the Nehemiah strategy. Some of you may be familiar with that strategy. I've talked about it before. But it's to go and rebuild the walls of our community. And the only people who can do that are the people who live there, you. And so, I have people who tell me, well, I don't have children in the school system anymore, or I have grandchildren. It doesn't matter whether you're a parent of a child in the school system or you're a tax-paying citizen or even a grandparent. We have a duty as Americans to protect our constitutional republic. And it starts with what we're teaching our children, because every generation of Americans is responsible to pass this constitutional republic over to the next generation. And unfortunately, we're doing a horrible job. And that's why we need parents and citizens to get engaged in this battle. But I'm looking forward to bringing you more news about what we're going to do in the state of Florida. I was also in Boca Raton, and there will be many more events. We're coming up on the end of the program. I can't believe it's already gone, but I just want to thank you again for tuning in. I want to remind you, go to our website, pjtn.org, sign up to get on our mailing list, become a PJTN Watchman. It's only $20 a month, and you help to make programs like this possible. And I appreciate you, I thank you, and I pray God's blessings upon you. Thank you for tuning in with us tonight. And I look forward to seeing you next week, where we have a conversation about what's going on. And I want to hear from you. Tell me what you're finding in your community. Let PJTN help you. God bless you, and have a great evening.